Kayla is the Director of Program Management for Migo. You heard us already talk about that, anchor it in, the Flexible Living product suite. And Kayla has 13 years of experience working in multiple facets of multifamily industry. We're talking about sales and leasing, software, and all the online tools, asset development, project management, short-term rental, execution, key word there, execution, not just talking about it. In the past 5 years, Kayla has led teams that have successfully launched hundreds of short-term rentals within their multifamily assets. Now you know why we brought her on. This is nationwide. Now, mostly Kayla has a VP of I guess it was, I don't remember the year, she can tell us about this, but was the Vice President of Program Management at Nido. And it was this first of its kind multifamily apartment operator designed for home sharing in partnership with Airbnb. And Kayla has also held various project management roles at the Bozzuto Group, as well as Equity Residential. Now, joining her in this conversation is Richard Chandler. He is the Director of Data and Product Development over at Migo as well. And this is that Flexible Living product suite. Richard has 15 years of experience in the hospitality industry, with the last 5 being devoted to data and the hospitality product development. Very important to understand, you just heard about the dynamic data. So Richard was recently head of data and revenue at Nido. This is that first of a kind multifamily operator that was this home sharing partnership with Airbnb. And prior to that, he was the director of revenue management for Hyatt Hotels. We've spent a lot of money with Hyatt just doing events. And before that, Pivot Hotels and Resorts, and manager of revenue management at Systems at Starwood Hotel and Resorts. So I'm really excited to be talking with Kayla and Richard to button up this conversation around the flexible opportunities, this $300 billion opportunities. So Kayla and Richard, welcome in.
Thank you for having us.
So great for you to join us. Just to set up context, we heard a little bit about Migo, but tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're working on.
Sure. So I'm Kayla. This is Richard. We are working with RealPage to essentially launch a flexible living product that is part of the RealPage suite. And we have an app that we've developed, and essentially it allows residents to list their apartments on Airbnb when they are not using them. So it allows them to home share. We also have a owner dashboard where owners are able to list their loss leader units or less popular floor plans that they would typically throw, 1 or 2 months free onto. They're able to list those on Airbnb as short-term rentals as well. So that's a model that's pretty common. Most people are familiar with the furnished rental model within the short-term rental space within multifamily communities, but really the resident hosting piece is kind of what differentiates us, and that's where we see a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, are you seeing, and maybe Richard, you've got the data on this, I don't know, it might be a softball question for your perspective, but are you seeing it different at larger communities versus smaller communities? I ask this question because historically, we, even the third-party operators would say, well, we don't want to manage anything under 100 units because it's difficult to find people and all these things. I feel like this is opening up some opportunities even for small properties. But tell us a little bit about sort of the asset class or the number of units or the type of property this is best suited for.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, as we're talking about short-term rentals, and your previous guest already kind of mentioned some of the things that really lend themselves to home sharing and to being successful in that. One of the biggest things that we talk about first and foremost is the regulations, right? Because there's a lot of different regulations around the country, and really in order to enable home sharing, you have to have the regulations that are in place that allow that activity to occur. Luckily for us, and as Kayla mentioned, we focus on resident hosting. So that's your existing long-term 12-month leases. And as a result, we're not focusing on taking apartments off of the market Instead, we're allowing people to live there full time and actually supplement their rent. Instead of removing an apartment from the pool, it's actually allowing somebody to live there and afford a little bit more money. So really, we look at regulations, like your previous guest mentioned as well, location. It's really the urban areas that have high walkability. That's really what we look for in an urban population center where you have access to amenities that you can easily walk to. But one of the other things we really look at is the age of the property as well. Assets that are 10 years old or newer tend to lend themselves a little bit better to the type of listings that you find on short-term rental platforms. And really the last two ones, which are kind of the most important, are the demographic. Really the demographic that we see implementing home sharing their apartments long-term and living there full-time are people between 24 and 35 years old, right? It's kind of the younger people, the nomads that are really working and living and traveling. But really the singular most important one is having some sort of access control, right? And what Migo does is try to keep the safety and security. That's a lot of the concerns about what's happening, especially when you just put units out on Airbnb. There's a lot of concern about safety and security. So with that access control piece, specifically smart access control, we can ensure that only the guests that are supposed to be in the building at any given time have access to that building. And we can really get them from the curb to the couch with no interaction between a human and the host and the guest.
Yeah, it's interesting. We saw what Uber did and Lyft and everything around, safety and security. We all thought, well, that's kind of crazy. I'm not putting, somebody I don't know in my car or getting into someone else's car. But right. Was it because we had it on here and we trusted the location, the technology was in there to accelerate that level of trust? I got to imagine that's impacting because, even in traditional renting, 6-month lease, 12-month lease, safety comes up, but we can't answer that question. But if the technology is present, you do get a little bit, you have more safety hurdles that you're getting over. Airbnb did it with just their own platform. So does that impact?
Yeah, absolutely. Really the number one concern that we hear, especially from institutional property owners, is that safety and security. And, a lot of the concerns that they have, I feel like, some of them are just kind of in their heads, not really from experience, but maybe from horror stories that they've heard in the past, or another asset manager that has maybe told them about, something that's happened at their particular property. And really our message is, you do the best that you can do. And our product really allows you to make sure that those people that are accessing your property are only the people of your long-term renters, right? And it's really no different than if me living at an apartment invited my friend over and that friend now caused some liability to the property, you know what I mean? And actually in this way, it's a little bit more control because right. We only allow the residents to grant access to people who have confirmed reservations on Airbnb. And Airbnb is our exclusive partner, and they also run various background checks on all the guests that arrive into any of our units. So we can really go to the owners with peace of mind assured that we're doing everything possible to make this as safe as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. And how does this work for the resident? They're getting a rev share on that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. So
this is interesting. Let me interrupt here a little bit. Sure. You're opening up. So I opened up earlier around, a company or a product that's giving the customer a better life or even more flexibility in this case, or the ability to generate other forms of revenue too. It's interesting to me. So I'm asking that question is how does that work?
Yeah, and that's a really good piece of the puzzle, right? The reason why it's successful is because we allow everybody to share in the returns, if you will. Everybody kind of gets a piece of that pie. The asset owners, the PMCs, they get a certain percentage of every booking. The resident keeps a bulk, actually 75% of every booking that they make. The remaining 25%, goes to the building to help maintain it. As you can imagine, with more transient traffic coming into your asset, there's certain things that you have to do. You have to clean the carpets more often. You have to do things like that. So a little piece of that pie does go back to the building owners, but a majority of it is kept by the resident, allowing them to offset their rent in some cases by as much as 30 or 40%.
Wow, that's significant. That's interesting. And now you're talking about getting a lift on, it's like renting an apartment twice without renting an apartment twice.
Exactly.
So Kayla, let me tell you, I have some questions around, so I've made some statements before in other events we've produced around innovation, and when something new comes forward, we often describe it as something that we remember or recall. Like, for example, a cordless phone, right? Like, we don't call this a cordless phone anymore because we're all trained that they don't have cords anymore. And for motion pictures, right? For Hollywood, it was like everything was just pictures, and then like, wait, it's a movie? Wait a minute, what's a movie? Well, it's a motion picture, horseless carriage. You go on, and it's these things that were something else. What is going on with the conversations describing these opportunities? I know this flexible living. What does that mean in the studies that you've done, or the work that you guys have done to get these into units?
So flexible living, I mean, as Richard touched on, it's certainly, it's very desirable by residents because residents are working from anywhere now. It's not just work from home, it's work from anywhere. And in the owners that we've been talking to that are interested in this product, they've really just been waiting. Some of them say 4 to 5 years. They've been waiting for something like this to come along. What's really, really important, though, because we have heard in some of our discussions with owners, they'll say things like, well, why can't I just do it myself? Why can't I just hire a person to kind of handle this on my own in the office? And where we like to kind of guide them is letting them know that this really only works if you have the proper controls in place. It's really, really important that you have the proper technology. So that's where we come in, and we will either handle it 100% for you by doing our full service model where we can take all of the responsibility off of your plate. Or if you'd like to do it on your own, you have the capacity, you can do that as well. But, the experience that we have in the industry and short-term rentals, specifically within the multifamily sector, which, a lot of owners see as a risk, we have the experience and we have the understanding of where the bumpers need to be placed in order for it to flow seamlessly. And I think in general, an innovation like this, owners might see this as a risk, right? Their Airbnb is scary. We don't like that word. But when we really help them understand all of the different components and all of the different experiences that we've had and everything that we're bringing to the table as far as this worked and this did not, it makes them feel more comfortable and really see the potential for that revenue to come in.
And take me through those conversations. Are they legal questions? Are they just, I don't understand it? Who's going to manage it? How do I train it? How is that happening?
Yeah, a lot of it is, and what we do initially with owners is we like to go through our entire process and let them know all of the different things that we will take care of. So the first phase is the feasibility. Yes, the permitting and regulations, that's very scary. That's very scary for people. And those are things that can change, right? So it could be, yes, home sharing is allowed today. There's always the potential for it to change down the road. It's not likely, though, if it's being managed in the right way, if it's not causing any problems. So that's where we like to kind of say that we are bringing value to that county or that municipality. So it's the permitting and the regulations that we would help facilitate them work through. So we will educate them. We stay abreast of what they are constantly. The access control is another big one, making sure that they have the proper access control in place. That's really, really important. And then we're bringing in the cleaning components. We have partnerships with various vendors to make sure that this flows seamlessly and securely.
And does this work? You mentioned RealPage. That's okay. So does this work if you're on other platforms?
Yes, absolutely. We're actually platform agnostic.
Okay.
So you don't have to currently have any other RealPage product in order to participate in our flexible living. Not only that, but if you're on another technology stack, let's say Yardi or Entrada or one of the other ones, we actually pull that data in as well. We have partnerships with all of the major PMSs so that you can really compare. One of the important things that we like to compare, right, is the amount of rent versus the amount of revenue that a resident brings in. Because as you can imagine, if a resident has offset their rent by 20, 30, 40%, they're exponentially more likely to renew their lease at the end of the term.
Do you find that operators are, when you mentioned the ratio of rev share and all that, I mean, I imagine that could move and change over time, but based on what it is now, 75%, are there decisions that operators are doing where they're negotiating that, or is it something like how are they approaching that from a financial standpoint? Are they looking at creating more, like using that revenue to offset other revenue, or are they using it as just a lift, I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. When it comes to the rev share that the resident gets, for example, that's non-negotiable in our mind. Like, we want the resident to keep a bulk of the revenue. You know, happy residents equal better for everybody. It's better for the PMC, it's better for the owner, it's better for everybody. So, you know, that's not really negotiable on our side. However, you know, you make an interesting point about what are the revenues being used for. What we see is that, you know, a lot of this it's 100% incremental, right? It's something that you weren't expecting. It's something that's not underwritten on your asset. It's something that's not a part of your loan or anything like that. And when that's the case, it adds exponentially more value when you go to sell that asset, right? So a lot of times these owners are just using it as a way to increase their NOI. For example, we've seen assets being able to increase their NOI by 10 or more % over the course of just 12 months by implementing resident hosting.
And what are you hearing from residents? Is this a marketing advantage? I mean, I'm just making my own assumptions of I can now travel for the summer, and now wait a minute, I'm not sitting there just paying for something that is not being used.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really the benefits of incorporating flexible rentals in general on the resident side, obviously they have so much more flexibility, they can travel. And eventually this leads into even, you know, further down the line where we're talking about flexible living, true flexible living, right? Where you can, let's say, subscribe, live in one place for 3 months, live somewhere else 3 months, live somewhere else for 6 months. Obviously that's, you know, where the industry is headed. It's definitely where our product is headed as soon as we, you know, prove out the concept and all that stuff. But really on the multifamily asset side, you know, we've seen 2 to 3% higher rents just by activating home sharing, right? Especially if you're the only asset in the market that's allowing the activity to take place. I want to just mention one statistic that is really shows where the market is going. A lot of multifamily buildings today, I would say 95+% multifamily buildings, strictly forbid home sharing. You know, it's a lease violation if you were to home share. However, according to NMHC, a recent study that they did, 65% of all book nights on Airbnb take place in multifamily buildings. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the residents want this. And not only that they want it, that they're already doing it at the risk of being evicted, right? So where we really come in and say, your residents are doing this anyway, why not do it in a safe, controlled manner?
Yeah, and does it take down the whole unit, or is it solving like a roommate situation, or how does that work if inside the unit they have an extra bedroom? Can they rent that out, or is it the whole unit?
Oh, that's a good question. So for, you know, going back to the whole conversation about safety and security, we only allow the entire unit to be rented. So you wouldn't just rent like your extra bedroom for say. It would be, I'm going out of town, you know, to New York City for the week, and I want to put my whole place out. And that way we make sure that, you know, there's nothing that can happen. There's nothing that can transpire between a host and a guest that would bring liability back to the asset owner, for example.
Yes, we've got a question here from Jake from State Farm is asking, curious about the standardization process of such cleaning, or such as cleaning. How do you ensure a premium guest experience with various furnishings, floor plans, et cetera?
A standard, so across the board, making sure that everybody has the same experience.
Yeah, so you mentioned you have partners and cleaning, but how do you make sure, like at the end of the day, the operator's taking on the brand risk and the integrity of all that? And so I'm assuming that's where the question's coming from.
So I guess there's a couple different aspects to this. One would be for the resident units versus the owner units. So for the residents, you know, it's a little harder to control because it's their apartment, and when they're home sharing their unit, we're not there in their unit inspecting it before they walk out the door to make sure that it's ready. What we can do though is we can be proactive in training them on what we have seen in the past as being successful and getting the best reviews. It's kind of something that sort of self-cleans itself though, because if a resident is leaving their unit dirty all the time and it's not the best experience, they don't have enough coffee for the guest who wants to stay in their unit, they're going to end up getting a bad review, and enough bad reviews kicks you off the platform. So you really have to put a lot of care and concern into the space that you have. As far as the owner units, those we do have 100% control over as far as what they look like as soon as our cleaners walk out the door. So as we mentioned, we have this partnership with a cleaning company. They are all over the country. So no matter where our asset is, we can have them come into the building. They can even, partner with the building directly to clean some of the common spaces. But for our purposes, we've built a partnership with them where they're integrated with our app, which is where the residents would be booking all the cleanings through. And they are trained specifically on the type of cleaning that they need to perform. They have a checklist. They have an inspection checklist where they do send us photos after they're done cleaning to make sure that the units are standardized and they are perfectly clean. Because cleaning is one of the biggest complaints on Airbnb about a unit. Now, as far as the rest of the unit and the standardization, we're always training the residents on here are the bare minimum pieces that you want to have in your unit. And here are some of the ways that we think you can get higher rates. So the number one recommendation that I always have for residents and for owners is high quality photography. So having professional photography, it will pay for itself in the first week that you're having your unit booked out. So it's $250, $300. Have a professional photographer come in, take photos to kind of market your unit in the best way possible. We've all seen those Airbnbs that, you're going to book an Airbnb online and it's the blurry, dark iPhone photos. It just isn't a good, first step. So having high quality photography will get the right people in the door. And then once they're in, making sure that you have quality furniture. If you outfit your place with, IKEA level furniture or below, it might be fine for a little while, but over time, the durability just isn't there and things are going to break. So you need to make sure that the quality of the furniture is superb. And then the final thing, which we've touched on, is the cleaning and making sure that you're paying attention, having professional cleaning come in. A big reason why you want to have a professional cleaner come in is because you get to charge the guest back that fee anyway. So if you're paying $80 to a cleaner to have your apartment cleaned, you can charge $80, you can charge $100 to the guest if you want to. You can make a little bit of money on it. So really it's kind of a no-brainer as far as making sure that your unit is professionally cleaned.
Well, it's something that gives our residents a little taste of what we've always done, right?
That's right.
Pretty interesting. And then I think I agree with you on the reviews that sort of becomes not competitive, but they know the accountability, their ability to do that again and receive income. They need to do this stuff right. Well, this has been awesome. I appreciate you. I know this is just probably the beginning of what needs to be shared to get this going. I really appreciate you guys both showing up. I know the audience is trying to figure all these things out. As much as we know, it's sometimes these things move and shift, and demand shifts and compliance shifts and all those things, but it sounds like you guys are there to walk people through those feasibility studies and help people at least have someone to talk to move through those things. So we'll be tracking your success and looking forward to keeping up with what you guys are working on. But I appreciate you guys showing up and delivering for our audience today.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you.